Others became writers through willful learning. Writers who argue in favor of nature feel the great writers are born with a special blend of creativity that sets them apart from the rest. These scholars hold the belief that if one does not have that innate talent, all the courses, seminars, and classes in the world may not help much. Thus, not everyone can learn to be a great writer if it's not in them. The argument here is that you can't truly learn to have the heart of a writer if you weren't born as one. Indeed, the ability to write is a gift, and not everyone has it. No amount of practice could ever make you a good writer if you lack creativity and knowledge. One can master the rules, but without natural born speed and imagination, writing becomes difficult. Real writing talent must exist before practice can take it further. The ability to write well seems to be linked to overall verbal and linguistic aptitude, which in turn is closely linked to general intelligence. For this reason, writing comes with research, organization, deep thinking, and analysis. With constant writing, the burning desire to get better should exist for any writer who is truly passionate about his craft.
Everyone on earth is born with a talent. What is yours?
There are many important components that an author must possess and bring to bear in his creative writing, but they all emanate from imagination, without which creative writing is unattainable. When all the components are present and put into action, then there is a synergistic effect, such that the whole will be greater than the sum of its parts. These include motivation, discipline, commitment, perseverance, grammar practice, and of course, talent. Without such elements as motivation and perseverance, talent will lie dormant. But without imagination, talent will lack the spark to spawn a captivating or mesmerizing story or piece of literature. Mani Essien Justin Rapson is an embodiment of talent, perseverance, commitment, and imagination. This is evident in his debut collection of poems, Once Upon a Pune's Gate.
I have been involved in literature right when I was in my early teens. I read and I love classical literature. I also enjoy poetry, which is really the genre for which I practice. And the enjoyment led me into the odyssey of actually having to write. And when I started writing, I discovered that it was something I wanted to do, not just do for a short term, but be involved in it in all aspects of poetry. I have been in a poetry competition. I have organized it. I have also entered for international competition where I got recognized for the piece of poetry that I sent in. So for me, it is a lifestyle. It also enables me to communicate when I am in the middle of poets alike. So it's something that it's an interesting experience, and I would like to also get other people to enjoy, follow me on this intellectual odyssey so that they can feel and see the same intellectual fulfillment for which I have experienced over the years, in fact, for the past 25 to 30 years.
He lets us in on his inspirations and entry into the world of creative writing.
I didn't have a background studying literature, not even at the level of secondary school. I embraced literature when I started associating with certain group of people in my middle teenage years. They had like a small writers club in the city for which I grew up, and they used to come together to read and share every new piece of poem that a member of the club had written. So on one or two occasions, I was invited to come and sit down and listen. And for me, it was such a euphoric experience. Listening to the beauty of the words, the, the way they capture certain ideas, and how they use words to describe those ideas. It was an experience for which I wanted to explore further. So I decided that I was going to get some of those poems from them, read, and when I read, I get my dictionary nearby, I get a thesaurus nearby, so that I could understand how the words are arranged. Then, if you're familiar with poetry, it has a lot of figure of speeches in them. And a poet is somebody who is allowed poetic license. So, if you are able to understand this in combination, it will lead you to a lot of understanding of the poems, and then your experience in poetry will be transcendent. So that was how it started, and I delved into it by actually writing my first poem.
His ingenuity as a poet strikes one from the title of the piece.
The title of the book is actually something coming out of a poet's imagination, but I like to break it down. I don't want to speak a lot on the word once. We all know that. Upon, we all know that. So the other two words, a plume and a gate. Historically, back in biblical time, classical Renaissance time, even in Victorian time, the main instrument of writing was a feather dipped into ink, and then you write with it. When the ink dries, you dip it back into the ink and continue writing. So a plume represented a major instrument of writing. If you were to substitute the word plume today, you would use a pen. So that will be once upon a pen's gate. But that is too ordinary for anybody to see it as coming from the mind of an ingenious poet. So that is why I use the word a plume. Then moving to the word gate. Gate in simple interpretation means a manner of movement, the way you work, the way you run, as the case may be. So if you add the meaning of gate to a plume, the simple translation of that name would be once upon the movement of a feather. So a movement of a feather once upon a time actually produced the content that we see in this book. The product is the result of how a feather did move once upon a time.
Themes from nature, human experiences, and more form part of his work.
Historically, most of the successful poets which we have come to appreciate in contemporary times have been people who have been inspired by an object. The object could be one in which they see and feel, or it could exist in their imagination. The themes explored in my book is not dissimilar to what I have just said now. My first entry into poetry, the anthology that you have, is an exploration in the genre of romantic poetry. Romantic poetry has to do about nature, pastoral living, the simple lives of people, and the things we see in nature.
Mani Robson poems are all inclusive when it comes to the audience, as his language is for the initiated and uninitiated students of poetry.
I have decided in writing my first anthology to explore all these facets of human life using contemporary English language, also using a Victorian English, because some expressions in poetry is better conveyed using a certain language. So as you read through, you will see some pieces with some form of archaic English, and then you move to some pieces that is written in pure contemporary modern English. It's just to allow for diverse experience for people, both for the initiated students of poetry and the uninitiated.
Poetic devices employed in the piece captures the reader's interest from the start to the end of the book.
There are different facets to a poem. You could decide to write a poem using what is called free verse. Free verse is like you're conversing and telling a story. Or you can make it structured. In that sense, you're writing it in stanzas. You can have a first stanza, second stanza, third stanza.
The award for him is well considered.
When my publisher, Nigerian publisher, received the manuscript for this and they read through it, what they did was get back to me and said, and they told me that they haven't seen this kind of writing ability in recent times. So the Tutola Palm for Poetry is an award given every year to exceptional poet in honor of Mr. Tutola, who was a Nigerian writer in the early 50s. So the panelists who read through my manuscript felt that the pieces of poetry in the anthology were actually very good, and they deemed it qualified to be awarded that prize. And it is very interesting that it was my first entry into that space that won this award.
He recites one of his poems dear to him, Sorrowful Agony.
"'Tis a day I recall so well. Home I'd come from a journey's dell. Though weary drab with sunken knee, I had my dearest last to say. So sweet some words I sent to her. It was my life's one happiest hour. With mien so bright, heart sinking high, of bliss within I can't deny, knowing she never has been late. Before to hit upon our date, I settled down to wait and dream, least minding any fortune dream. But all day long I pined and moped. Each passing bird be her I hoped. And when night came and thunders drummed, I was as sad as when I come." So this poem is probably one of the most beautiful I have ever had to write.
Our beam on arts composition is on an individual who's proven that talent and passion stands one out in any chosen career.
Once Upon a Plume's Gate is Manny Robson's debut into the poetic genre, considered a monument to creative art from a visionary with an eye for situation, an ear for dialogue, and the mastery of the ancient art of aesthetic expression. Once Upon a Plume's Gate, an award winning anthology, is an intellectual odyssey in the fine pattern of poetic symphony, exploring the vagaries of various human experiences. The collection is an amalgam of life's mystic from every familiar perspective of good and evil, ambition and failure, love and betrayal, hope and despair. Manny Etienne Justin Robson attended the prestigious Hope Waddell Training Institute, Calabar, holds a Bachelor of Technology degree from the Federal University of Technology, Owerri, where he graduated as the best student in his class in 2000. He was awarded a scholarship by his state government to study for masters at the State University of New York Maritime College, United States of America. On graduation in 2004, he was hired by the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation Limited, HSBC Bank in the USA, into its Graduate Management Development Program, where he participated in a number of investment banking and financial advisory transactions in the bank's head office in New York. On his return to Nigeria, he worked with a number of financial institutions, culminating in his engagement as the managing director of the asset management business of a foremost insurance company in Nigeria. He is also the chairman of the Manny Robson Foundation, a non-profit entity set up for service to humanity. He is from Cross River State, Nigeria. He is a member of the Institute of Directors, among other professional organizations. Manny's interest in poetry started as an 11-year-old during his first English literature class. As a teenager, he wrote his first set of poems and entered into a local school competition, which brought his talent to the fore. Once Upon a Plume's Gate, a collection of poems he wrote in the early 90s during the intervening period between leaving secondary school and starting university education, is an expose to his raw talent in the art of creative writing. No wonder in 2020 the collection won him the Tutuola Palm for Poetry Award.
Are you an aspiring author or poet? Then literary instruments are your friend. Up next on the program is our literary device segment.